Welcome everyone to the Science of Peace podcast, Yoga, Breath, and Meditation. We're talking about communication today. The topic is how to go from forcing people to accepting people, how to go from trying to impose how you want them to be to just accepting them where they are. And what are some communication techniques about this, and what are some of our personal experiences about this? I have a guest today, and so I'll introduce her in just a second. You know me. If this is your first time finding us on iTunes or any of the platforms, definitely leave a comment, leave your review. This is how we get discovered, and share this with your friends, everybody, if you're watching this. So you know me, Yogi Chris, PhD, the founder of Ninth Limb Yoga and author of many books, host of many podcasts. I travel the country teaching yoga and also have a PhD in the human universities. So that's fun. And so we're joined today by a very special friend who I met in Los Angeles years ago. Her name is Jessie Levine, and she is a well-known yoga teacher in the Los Angeles area. She hosts many women's yoga retreats, specifically around self-empowerment, personal development. She does things like nude photos to really empower women to get into their skin and feel comfortable with themselves. It's amazing what she does, and infuses a lot of her personal development journey, a lot of linguistics and speech patterns and understanding the mind. And and she also hosts yoga teacher trainings there in the Los Angeles area. So we're going to talk about some things that she has discovered on her journey, and I'll just be kind of interviewing her, and I'll give maybe my take at the end. So definitely welcome to the podcast, Jessie.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Happy to be here.
Yeah. And everybody that's on, if you're on any of the platforms, we got 1,000 platforms running at the same time now, YouTube and Facebook and Zoom and so on. Feel free at any time, type your questions. We'll get to your questions, comments, anything like that. And this is interactive. So originally, do you remember, Jessie, when I contacted you, I had messaged you and it was just like, you were in my thoughts. I was thinking about you. How was your day? And then you came up with you were on a new level, like you had resituated some relationships and come into a new understanding about not forcing people and accepting people. You remember that?
Yes.
What was that all about? Like, just give us the framework about, like, what did you mean? Like, you went from stop forcing people to accepting people. What was happening?
In as short as possible, I've always been kind of like a tough grow or nothing kind of person, like always driving to be better. I grew up as a competitive gymnast, like there was no other option, like either you're pushing or you're quitting. So I had like a moment over the holidays, and it was like a few things were leading up to it, but I had a moment over the holidays in a conversation with my mom where I really saw that attitude coming at me, that like, you must be this way in order to succeed kind of. And I felt the remnants of that, and I felt hurt from that. And I realized that my mom, without meaning to, was like subtly shaming me for the experience that I was having, because it wasn't, like the best possible experience or something like that. And because of that, I realized not only does that feel crappy for me, but I know that I do that to people, and I do not want to do that to people. I do not want to make someone feel like that. And I know that I have been, again, very subtly. It's not like I'm out like making fun of people, but it just like comes across kind of as an energy. So, yeah.
Yeah, is that like an energy, like because of how you feel when you're communicating with them, or were you catching like tone inflections, or what were some of the clues of this, communication pattern, so that people can become aware, maybe if even they're doing it, maybe I'm doing it.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all do it a little bit here and there, which is why it's so tricky to detect. But I think it's subtly thinking, okay, I know, like, if I do take these steps, I will succeed. And I see the person in front of me and they're not taking those steps. And I feel like they might not succeed because they're not taking those steps, right? So it comes from like a pretty authentic place of wanting to help somebody. Like, here they're not really taking the steps that it takes, and I need to help them, right? So a lot of it is like from a good natured, like it's from good people, it's with a good heart. But what happens is now I come across and I'm saying, well, you have to do it like this because that's the way to get to where you say you want to go. And while that might potentially be useful, now I've subtly told them that I don't trust them to figure that out on their own. So I have to come in and do it. And it's super subtle. Obviously, I'm not saying like, you're going to fail, you suck, or something like that. But I am, hopefully, but I am saying like, this is the way and you're not doing it. And therefore what that means is you're failing in some way at this moment. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, like it's just a feeling because that's not explicit in words. I mean, for the most part, it's like, by helping you level up, I'm reminding you that you're not here. Like I'm saying, I want you to be here, but you're not doing it. You're not here yet. And so like that energy is coming across, even though it's from a good place, you know?
Yeah. So that's fascinating. You said a couple times, like the place it comes from, it's coming from a good place. So that's very interesting that like, it doesn't sound like maybe when you changed, we'll talk about like how you changed that communication. And so when you changed how you were communicating, did that change the place you were coming from, or did it just change the communication?
It completely changed the place I was coming from.
So you were coming already from a good place. Sorry, sometimes I lose, the Wi-Fi, whatever. I don't know if it fragments or anything. So you were already coming from a good place, but then it still, when you changed your communication, it altered the place you were coming from also?
Yeah, so previously, and when we do it kind of like that, like here's the better way to do it, and I'm trying to tell you the better way to do it. Even though it's from a good heart, it still is coming from a place of like, I know better and you know less. So here I'm going to impart my wisdom on you. And like in certain settings, that's obviously very important. Like if you're a teacher, if you're a coach or something like that, like there might be areas where that is just the truth. Like I have more knowledge and you have less knowledge and I'm telling you my knowledge, sure. But like in a friend-to-friend environment, or even a student to teacher in a yoga setting, for instance, in a retreat setting, it still doesn't set the student up to be able to do this on their own, right? It's still me saying, here's the better way. I know more, do it like this, rather than helping them figure out what the best way to do it is for them. Because often I do know, for instance, I do know, or my teacher or my mom or whatever does know the better way to do it based on their experience. And yet if this person doesn't have those same experiences, it might not be the best way to do it. And they have to find the best way for them.
Yeah. And so you were alluding to on the retreat that you do these retreats. And before we go into that, would you want to talk about your retreats at all? Like what makes them so special? Because you do these very special retreats. I don't hear other people doing these kinds of retreats.
Yeah, I think they're special. Obviously. So they're all female retreats. They're centered around yoga. We do a couple of yoga sessions a day usually. But really it's about self-development and self-love. So like the kind of the climax of the retreat is that we do a nude photo shoot in nature, which for most women, they have a hard time looking at themselves in the mirror, let alone seeing a photo of them where they're not like, perfectly made up, photo edited. Like there's all these like tricks that women have to like look skinny and like, right. So we do all this like.
They do. No, they're not manipulating that. No. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. So like actually just seeing yourself stand naked, like on a tree or like in the dirt and not be posing and not, I let the women like put on makeup if that's what's going to make them feel comfortable. But the intention is not to put something on clothing wise or makeup wise that is covering up the truth. So they're using whatever tools they want to use to accent the truth as best as possible, which is still a very raw way to look at yourself if you're not used to that. So yeah, so that's like, even though that's only one section of the retreat, that's kind of the point of it is like, what is it going to take for me to see myself and see my rolls of fat and see my, acne and see me in like a less than perfect face and still love that beautiful human creature standing on a rock, like still love it and see how incredible it is.
Wow. And so this is really where the awareness of this kind of communication pattern that you were having, it came to it's really where it came to your awareness is in these retreats and when you were guiding other people and teaching other people. Would you talk about like that maybe that moment, or maybe was it a moment, or was it just like a culminating kind of shift, or how did you come into awareness in the retreat that you were subtly guilting, shaming, by saying this is where you got to go to, but not acknowledging that this is where you're at and you're doing it wrong, and get it right kind of thing? Where did you come into awareness of that?
Oh God. Well, definitely in pieces for years. And I'm sure I'm still going to learn that lesson over and over again. But there was like two things that really happened. One, on the retreat, I asked the women, why are we doing this photo shoot? Like, what's the intention behind it? And like somebody raised their hand and was like, because you told us to. I was like, oh no, no, that's not why we're doing it. So that was like kind of a comical version of it. Like, no, I'm not trying to make you do something. Like, that's not the intention. And if that's coming across, okay, there's something here for me. And then like basically what I felt, not by any doing of them, that was not English, but you got what I mean, is like day one, I realized, oh, they're not totally where I thought they would be in terms of being able to look at themselves. They were still feeling very shy, a little close, like their walls were still up a little bit. And I didn't think they would be for whatever reason. That's a different story. And so I was coming up against this like kind of fighting with reality. I was like, okay, well, here they are, but I don't want them to be there because we have so much to do. We're trying to go here. And so I was like feeling conflicted, and I was having trouble getting present. Like usually I can sit down, close my eyes, breathe with them, and I'm present. And I was just like, ugh, like hitting a wall myself. And so I took a break and I did like my own meditation and breath work, and essentially tapped back into that feeling that I had with my mom, where I was like, okay, I remember what that felt like, even though in my mom's case too, it was from her heart, and I feel like I'm here really wanting to help these women. I know that that's true. And I know that I'm not doing it in the way that is going to have them like love themselves in it. I'm doing it in a way that is putting them down just slightly, just subtly. And it was just kind of like an epiphany after that reflection. It just like hit me where I was like, okay, well, that's not how I want to be. That's not like my intention in being here. And I'm going to continue to feel conflicted if I keep doing that. So like closed my eyes, took a few breaths, and completely lifted up out of it. Which I think, is magical, but that was definitely because of like 6 months of like slowly leading up to it.
Yeah. A lot of those shifts seem to, the shift is a moment, but there's a big buildup that you don't see, the preparation for that shift. And I mean, that with handstands, you get the one-handed finally, but it's like you were training for 2 years for it, but it's a moment that you get it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask a question that it might be difficult. I don't know if I haven't asked you this question before, but since I do so much with like NLP and language and whatever, and so you were saying like the guilt or shame was coming, like the communication was a guilting and a shaming, but you refer to this thing that it's like it kept coming from the heart. And so I'm wondering if you know what I'm about to ask. Does that mean that the heart it was coming from has guilt and shame in it?
Yes, for sure. For sure. I mean, actually, that was a part of the epiphany. Thank you for saying that. Is that if I'm doing that to them, I'm doing it to myself. And then I realized I was beating myself up for not like being the person that I wanted to be. And so then I was getting mad at them for not being the person that I wanted them to be. And then it just like,
yeah, really. You could almost, that's like one definition of karma almost.
Yeah.
Cause and effect. It was done to me, I'll do it to others. And
well, yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, and that is kind of how I saw it as this like breakthrough was coming to me over a few months of like, I was subtly, what's the word? Like reliving the cycle of abuse. My coaches did it to me. And now here I am doing it to other people. My coaches wanted me to grow. Here I am wanting other people to grow, but I'm delivering the same kind of abuse that I was delivered. Absolutely,
man. And I know that that's going to be the experience of a lot of the viewers on all these platforms. And, it's just the human state, like for however far it seems like we've come, we're barbarians compared to whatever we're going to be 1,000 years from now. And, so yeah, there's a lot of violence in communication. Hey, thank you. She says great questions. I apply myself. I try to ask good questions. So here's the question is, how can we not do that? Right? How can we not do this pattern that we probably all have some of it of like what are the ingredients? How can somebody identify if they're doing this in your estimation or how in your perspective?
I mean, on one hand, I'll start by saying I think it's important to acknowledge that it may never completely go away. Like, no matter how self-aware I get, no matter how self-studied I get, no matter how practiced I get, I still might make like spiritual mistakes or energetic mistakes, right? Of like not coming from, a non-traumatized place. Like I might speak from my trauma, whether I mean to or not. So hi, Angelica. So, on one hand, it's like, it's perhaps attainable, but it's important to acknowledge that we're not perfect. And so the process is going to be ongoing, I think, for most humans, most of the time. And then the answer, as if it were possible, is like, just start to become aware, like start to notice, like I've noticed it for years when I would speak to my students kind of in a harsh tone. Part of that is my style. Part of it is because I like to be strict and I have a high standard and I want to like push you, and that's beautiful. But I would leave a class and I would feel, sometimes I would feel bad. I would feel like, oh, I yelled at them, or like, I was too hard on them. They weren't ready and I didn't know how to get out of it. But because I acknowledged that I felt that way and didn't just pretend like I know everything and I'm just a hard ass and that's the way it is, like, no, I acknowledge that sometimes I feel bad about it. So this is important for me to look at. And it's been, unraveling over the last, 6 years or something. Like slowly little bits come out where I'm like, oh yeah, I totally was doing that because of my own ego. Great. Now I can unravel that part, So, ultimately, I know it's like not a complete answer, but
well, maybe this will help. Yeah, awareness that's a solution to every problem. I think a lot of awareness. So what was when you shifted this, when you woke up to this, and how do you say, when you snapped out of that behavior, then what did it become? Like, what did your communication become afterwards? I know that there's still like residue of it, and it's it's in all of your communication. So it's like I'm weeding this behavior from all over the place, and we'll get into maybe even relationships for a second. Right now, we're really talking a lot about teacher-student. But was there like an obvious difference in how you were communicating after this realization and snapping out of the behavior? And what was that change? What did it change into?
Yeah. Before, if somebody, how do I say this? Like if I would come across a student where I felt the wall, like I felt them resisting me, I would do one of two things. They sort of split. Either I would like go in for the kill to like break the wall down, or I would just kind of like be passive about it. And I would just be like, okay, well, I guess you have a wall, like, and neither of those is really productive. They can be, but they were just kind of dancing around it. Whereas afterwards, I was able to be like, okay, like I was able to even just say it, like, okay, I'm sensing a wall here. What's going on? Tell me about that. What does it feel like? I would ask them what it feels like in their body. I would ask them, like, what's the fear that's coming up? Or if they weren't ready to get there, I would back it out even further. Yeah. So it was like, okay, there is a wall. Cool. Well, I'm not going to bulldoze it. So let's talk about what the wall's doing there.
Yeah. Wow. And a lot of my viewers are guys. I think a lot of your viewers are girls and women, or I don't know, but they come to me for even coaching on dating. And this is something that I see a lot. Like there will be a resistance to whatever's happening, or a resistance to the communication, or, you'll touch a hot button, or, trigger word, or one of these things. And exactly that splitting of like, how do I react to that? Do I go in for the kill? Like, or do I back off and then and neither of those acknowledge what is happening. And so both of those are out of presence, both of those, things. And they have a place too. And, I'll get into like my little take on it. There was something that you said specifically about tone, that it was like your aggressive tone. So is that something that you have like a handle on, like you catch when your tone is like coming across abrasive, or if it's coming across like in a guilting, shaming way? And if so, then like, how did the tone change? Like, are you manipulating your tone to be a little bit more, able to connect with people when the wall appears?
I wouldn't say I'm manipulating my tone, because it's less intentional than that in terms of the way it comes out of my mouth. But for sure, I can tell when I'm like trying to bulldoze, I can tell how it comes across in my voice. And then
what do you mean specifically by bulldoze?
Like one of my students on the retreat wasn't sharing something that like was the thing that was stopping her from growing, right? And she was like keeping it a secret. And so, so like in that moment, I didn't do this, but one of my options would have been like, you need to share that. Speak up. This is what's going on. This needs to come out because this is what's stopping you. And I would just like, right. And you can hear me even imitating it. My tone gets like very like output, very masculine. I mean, maybe it doesn't sound masculine as a woman, but like very like directed.
Now is the time. No, this is what's blocking you.
Yeah, but it does change. And so when I hear that coming out, I can check myself now. And like, I've gotten to the place now where I can like watch the words starting to come out of my mouth and then like pull it back in and rework it.
That's good. That's a level up. That's a power. When you see the language come out and you like lasso it, pull it back in, rearrange it, and then good. Super cool. Okay, cool. Let's see. So, how have you, man, where do I want to take this? Like, what's the lesson in this? Like, how would you, I mean, there's a big lesson. Like, here's what I'm understanding so far, that there was like, there was an abrasiveness to the communication. There was a wanting for people to be somewhere that they weren't necessarily. So it sounds like maybe acknowledging where somebody was at, and and that sounds like trendy. That's a really kind of trendy kind of thing to say, acknowledge where you're at. And so what's a less trendy way to say that? What's a practical way to say that? Like acknowledging where somebody's at that facilitates them. Because it seems like that you're a growth facilitator. You want them to break through that wall, get to the next level for them. That's what they're paying you for. They're coming to you because it's like they see something in you that they want for themselves, but coach me there. How do I get there? Make it attainable for me. And I'm hitting a wall. The wall is invisible because there's no like wall in front of me. So it's like something in me is stopping me from moving forward. Like, how do you help somebody through that?
Well, I mean, I think in terms of how to help somebody through it, I think we kind of address the language to use in terms of like asking them what it is they're experiencing. Like that, like just as simple as that. Like, what are you experiencing right now?
Oh yeah.
Rather than being like, what do you want? Or what's stopping you? Or like any of that language, which I love, but it is sometimes still a little too, it's still a little too directed. Like you're not there. So where do you want to be? Right. But if I'm actually just like, well, what's the feeling right now? What is it that you're going through in this moment? That really helps. And then I'll also say, like, the big takeaway for me, not just as a coach or as a facilitator, but in my own life, was like, when am I trying to be better for something other than love? I mean, maybe that's still a corny way to say it or a trendy way to say it, but like, I realized one of my like big cornerstone relationships in my life, and also I'll say with my mom as well, was based on being better for them, being better so that they loved me more, or they liked me more, I should say. That's not love, right? But instead of just actually loving myself so much, valuing myself so much that I want to grow. But if it's about me being better for them, that's when it's a problem. And that's what I see as a coach too. If they're trying to be better for me, that's why that realization about them doing the photo shoot, because I told them, was like, oh no, because like if they're doing it for me, it's no longer actually about them valuing themselves. It's about some ego gets tied in there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I do. And it does make sense. I do understand. Totally. You know, man, that's tough. You're in the tough business. You're in the tough business. That's wow. How to get someone's attention off of that and put it on like that self-growth. Wow. So yeah, I think that was I was going to synthesize, and I told you this was kind of what I intended to do because I hear a lot of key things, and I do so much of these podcasts, and I teach so much online, which is very vocal. So I do teach like in person a lot too, but I'm just a very vocal teacher. I don't like demoing a lot of physical things. I don't do any hands-on adjustments. I just like talking people through things. I see myself as a spellbinder or like a wordsmith. And so, I've heard some key things that I think I'd love to synthesize. Do I have your permission to just kind of synthesize what you said in my own perspective?
Please do.
Yeah. So I think the key thing, I see 3 key things, and this is super useful. Actually, Angelica, you want to come over and talk for a second? Angelica, can you hear her, Jesse?
Hi.
Yes.
Yeah, say hi, my name is Angelica.
Hi, my name is Angelica.
Yeah, you hear that?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So when you see somebody like a wall come up, like a resistance or hesitation, like what are some things that you immediately think of, like 2, maybe 3 techniques of like communication that would help dissolve that wall, really? I don't even think of it as like push through the wall. I think of it as like remove the wall, like the force field of energy, just neutralize that shit.
Right.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is guess what they're experiencing, or like what emotion are they experiencing in that moment.
How would you do that?
Just by saying like, you seem frustrated, or are you feeling frustrated? Are you feeling sad?
Yeah.
Are you feeling scared?
Are
you feeling incompetent? So just guessing their emotion, their feeling in that moment. That's the first technique that comes up.
Yeah. So, okay, cool. So they're having some resistance and you see them free. Like this happens to me sometimes. Like I'll get like the little boy in me will get triggered from some absurd, I don't even know what does it. It's just like all of a sudden I'll feel my emotional state like freeze, like the fluidity stops. And it's like, I'm like all these weird patterns of communication come out. And I'm like, what is going on? Like my robot just got hijacked by some virus, some viral, behavior. Like, where is this coming from? And it's like, okay, so you would acknowledge, you'd be like, are you experiencing this? Like, what was the speech pattern that you had, Jessica? What are you experiencing right now? And like we just covered this in the last podcast, right before this one, actually, where it's like sometimes somebody is so in their emotion that when you ask them something like, what are you experiencing right now? They don't have the language for it. They're too in their emotion where it's like, I don't have the words for it. So sometimes I have found that like guesstimating, like, are you feeling blah, blah, blah? Are you feeling upset? Are you feeling sad? Using generally generic words, usually not something really refined. Like, are you feeling remorseful? Or, are you feeling, I don't know, a general one would be like, are you feeling blah? It's so general. Anything else? What's another thing you might say? Or not a necessarily like speech pattern, but like when you see someone like frozen in their behavior or a little like they've hit a wall, like they're, maybe hesitancy, or you see their eyes that they're just like, they're not moving forward in their mind. Like, what would you do in that state? It isn't premeditated, so I don't know what she's going to say.
Well, it sounds similar to what Jesse says in regards to asking them to acknowledge the wall, but in my language, it would be like almost pacing their reality at that moment. Like you.
I mean, that's a technical term. Yeah, that's a technical term for saying what's happening as it's happening.
Yeah. So, and a great example of that is that when in the role of teacher student, and you're guiding them into a handstand, and the next step would be like, okay, now kick your leg, and the student doesn't like do the hop for their leg or something. Then you might approach it in a way, oh, I noticed that
Mm.
this XYZ didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe that would lead into like the emotion and what they're experiencing and the feeling.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, so that's very similar to what I'm going to say is acknowledgement. This is like the key is acknowledgement. You acknowledge what's happening. So in like the handstand example, I noticed that there was some hesitation in your leg kicking. Are you feeling afraid? So that would be like combining those two patterns. Or the basic thing like is I become extremely curious about why it's happening. Like I just like tap into the infinite curiosity in me and I just rip out all these different words and languages and just the tone. It's like I'm really curious. Like, and it's sometimes tough when as a teacher or as a guy or whatever, and I'm like, I'm wanting something. I'm wanting something to happen and I want it now. And so I got to let that go, become kind of an empty container a little bit. And it's like really curious, like really why? What's going on? Like, what is it? What are you experiencing right now? Like right now, what are you feeling right now? Are you feeling this? Are you feeling that? What's that like? What's that word? So genuine curiosity and, an acknowledgement of what's happening, acknowledgement of my perceptions, and then really soliciting acknowledgements from them that I'm communicating to them so that I'm not communicating to a wall. A lot of people, I like this analogy, even though I hate that this is like the actual state of humanity, but I think this is a really valuable datum is that we're all walking around as a bunch of wounded animals. We're all a bunch of wounded animals. Have you ever tried to approach a wounded animal? Have you ever tried to approach a stray dog? This is people. People are this. People are almost all wounded. And even in America, and we're all like, this is so easy living here compared to some places, and we're still all wounded animals. And it's like, and when you're teaching somebody and opening up like their neurology and like new experiences, new body movement, it's like that wounded animal comes out. And then you're going to go approach them and touch them and then give them critical feedback. And you're going to get bitten. You're going to get bit. So, approaching with curiosity and as if it was a wounded animal and some of these like pacing reality, which is kind of like an acknowledgement. And then when you say something, make sure you get some feedback. Like, did you hear me? Did you hear what I said?
Right.
Is this making sense? Yeah. And I help them say yes, maybe, or say no with like a little nod or something, snap them out of that frozenness and then, continuing from there. So the basic technique is acknowledge what's happening as it's happening. So like guys, they're following me. If you're with a girl and something happens, you see her shut down a little bit on the date. It's like, oh, what just happened? A lot of times what happens is not even what happened. Like you didn't do something. Something happens that she remembers something that happened. And so she's reacting to what she remembered happened. And so we take it personally, guys, because we take everything so personally. But it's like, sometimes it is you, but sometimes it's not. And so it's like, hey, what's happening? What is this? What are you experiencing right now? Was it me? And so that's kind of my takeaway from it so far. I don't know. What do you think about that, Jesse?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And I'll also just add in terms of you talking to your guys about it, like that is a lot of what we talk about in the women's retreats is like how we have, when we shut down historically, when women shut down in a family setting or in a relationship setting, often there's not room for them to speak up. Right. Often, I mean, in my experience, like men will always win the argument. Like that is like my experience of men, just historically speaking. Right. So as a woman, if I shut down, I don't really think that I have the right to speak up about it. And that's not anybody's fault, but it is just like a part of the reality that women live in, just super generically speaking. So we're working through a lot of that, and in interpersonal relationships, that is so healing and so like connecting between a man and a woman for the woman specifically.
What is when the man is acknowledging like what's happening, there's an experience happening.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really it's an old yoga thing of like expansion or contraction. Like when you see the contraction happen in somebody, like point it out and just be aware. The thing you said, be aware of your voice tone. Hey, what's going on? Like that's not going to work. Hey, what are you experiencing right now? Like it's
Yeah.
So cool. All right, we got a couple questions or comments. IMDOM Bird, Imdom Bird. I don't know how to say your name. It takes pain to realize these things, but that's a moment to create clarity. Cool. Relativity. We all experience these things, but we are all searching for a solution, regardless if the answer is different for each individual. Cool. And let's see, anything on all these platforms? Any YouTube comment? No YouTube comments. And let's see, on Zoom, anybody got any comments? Okay, so this is the end. You guys got a second to, if you have something burning, a burning desire you want to ask Jesse, definitely just type it in. And do you have any kind of closing thoughts? We could keep going, but it's going to be kind of a long broadcast. I was going to go into like how you've seen this in your relationships, like personal relationships, but maybe we save that for another time. And,
yeah, I think that was lovely.
Yeah. So how would you like to wrap this up? Well, anything you want to plug for what you're doing there in Los Angeles?
Yeah, I'm taking my brand to the next level. So my retreats have been called Take It Off for a while. Now I'm kind of expanding that to all of the things that I do. I'm doing one-on-one coaching now, so you can book me for privates to work on this stuff mentally and emotionally. And I'm also combining that with yoga. So you can do the mental, emotional work and then see how that resides in your body. So we get to work kind of from both ends together. And then, yeah, I've got a retreat coming up in June, teacher training coming up in July. So if you want to talk more about this stuff, learn more about this stuff, please reach out to me. There's lots of opportunity to do that.
Absolutely. How would they reach you? I mean, this is on live. This is Jessie Levine on Instagram. And how is that how they should contact you, is through Instagram?
Yeah, Jessie Levine on Instagram is great. I've got a new website and stuff coming soon, but for now, cool. Jessie Levine and jessielevine.com.
Jessie Levine, and I'll put that in the description to the podcast. Cool. We got timing is a little off, but it referred to a particular topic, LOL, but yeah, you wrote it. Yeah, that's how it happens. Sometimes comments, that's why questions sometimes are better. Dr. Ace, so other than acknowledging the wall, how do you share the wisdom without subtly shaming? So that's, you're asking that question. What do you mean share the wisdom? When you want the other individual to grow and be successful.
How do you share that without coming across like shaming?
Okay, so when you want someone to be successful and get to that next level, and so how do you come across so that you're not subtly shaming them to get them to that next level? What would you say to that, Jessie?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest mystery in my life. So thanks for asking.
Oh yeah, the biggest mystery.
But essentially, I mean, I think it's kind of a combination of the things that we've been talking about, right? Acknowledge them where they're at, have them, like, give them the opportunity to speak on it, because, unless I'm teaching, like, I don't know, astrophysics or something, like for the most part, I'm teaching, right? For the most part, I'm teaching wisdom that I've learned through experience and through my own self-awareness and self-reflection. So often with my guidance and really like space container for them, right? Like I'm giving them, like I'm holding them essentially. Often with that, they'll be able to see what I see anyway. So I think that's a big part of that, is like really just giving them the space to see it themselves. And then like, if they don't get there, on one hand, probably let it go and let them be where they're at. And then on the other hand, like there's opportunity to share your wisdom by maybe sharing your own personal story, or offering something. Like the language that I really like is like, I'll offer something. If it doesn't resonate with you, let it go. And then at least in that place, I get to speak on what I see for them, and they get to decide, is that for me?
Yeah. And I would say, acknowledging where they're at, make sure that you're in their reality, you're on the same page, and reiterating the goal. The goal is what they're going for. So once you have rapport with them in their state, and then say something like, are you still wanting this? Are you still wanting this? Are you still looking to get this today, tomorrow, the next day? Would you like some guidance in this? Would you like some help with this? I just want to create a yes ladder. So I want to create a bunch of agreements, and that will make them more and more receptive to actual critical advice. And often in that process, I'll find a more micro step than the big step I was trying to take, which was to say this big piece of advice. And So yeah, anytime I can chunk it down to smaller steps, it'll make it easier.
I like that. I like the yes ladder.
Yeah, the yes ladder, that's where it's all at, right? I had a guy, he was teaching me the other day, and it was just like, I told him, I was like 1,000 yeses in a row, because everything he was saying, like every sentence, I was like, uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. And I was like, by the end of it, I'm like, he could say anything, and it would just like go right into my mind. So it's just like, yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So awesome. Thanks so much, Jesse, for joining. Everybody check out jessielevine.com, JESSIELEVINE. Wow, that was pretty good. jessielevine.com, Jesse Levine on Instagram, and we'll put that in the description. If you're catching this recording, let us know what you think about it. Post a comment, share it, give us a review. And if you all like this content, then share about it. Talk about it. We have a flyer post about it, and send us a message if you liked about it. So thanks, Jesse, and we'll see you all in the next time on Science of Peace podcast.
Amazing. Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome.